Have you ever thought that maybe spiritual destiny isn't just random, but that it actually operates a lot like physics? Well, the source material we're digging into today suggests that hidden right inside the Quran is a very precise, totally unchanging law. It's a set of mechanics that literally govern how a spiritual core opens up, either into life or into death.
So in this explainer, we're going to unpack this whole system piece by piece. We'll start with the universal law itself. Then we'll look at the specific protocol for how you engage with truth. After that, we'll dive into 3 really powerful case studies from the Quran to see this law in action. Then we'll zoom out to see how this is all part of a huge cosmic blueprint, and we'll wrap it all up by looking at the final lock that holds it all together.
All right, let's jump right in. At the absolute heart of this entire framework is a core mechanic that drives, well, pretty much every single outcome we're about to talk about. The big question the source material asks is this: what's the trigger? You know, what is that one specific moment or action that forces a sealed spiritual core to finally unlock its potential and move toward its ultimate destiny?
So the key concept here is what our source material calls the sealed core. The best way to think about it is like a seed. It holds all the potential, right? It contains the memory of everything that's happened, but it doesn't have active life. Not yet. And that seal, it will not break. That seed will not sprout until one very specific thing happens. The truth is confessed.
This framework lays out a 4-stage process that's described as absolute and totally unchanging. It always starts with the seal. Then comes the critical make-or-break moment, confession. Now, if that confession is refused, or if it just comes too late, the system flips into a state of inversion, and finally, it all leads to judgment.
Okay, so if a timely confession is the key that unlocks that seal and leads to life, how do you get there? Well, the source material actually lays out a really clear, logical protocol for arriving at that truth.
First, we've got to understand what's standing in the way. The term used is taghut, and it represents any kind of false or temporary authority. I mean, think of an ideology, a political system, even your own ego that demands your ultimate loyalty. The core principle for dealing with it is simple. Anything that rises and sets, like the sun or the moon, can't be the ultimate reality. It can't be what truly rules your heart. And here's the kicker. You don't defeat it with force. You dissolve it with questions. This protocol for taking apart false authority is shown perfectly in the story of the prophet Abraham or Ibrahim. First, you question every authority you see. Second, you detach from these things once you realize they aren't permanent. Third, and this is the big one, you reorient yourself, your focus, toward the one unchanging creator. And finally, you just let the falsehood expose its own weakness, and it becomes a witness against itself.
And this verse, this is the activation switch. It's that moment of conscious reorientation, turning away from everything that's temporary and turning toward the eternal source. According to the source, this is what makes a truthful confession possible, because your heart is now aligned with reality itself.
So now let's look at 3 really powerful examples from the Quran that show this law in action. You'll see the incredibly different consequences of engaging this process or failing to engage it in time.
Here we've got a perfect, direct contrast. On one side, you have the wife of Aziz from the story of Joseph. She confesses the truth before the system hits that irreversible tipping point. And the result? Her spiritual seed opens forward, it blossoms into life. But on the other side, you have the people of Lut's town. They just flat out refuse to acknowledge the truth. The result for them? Their entire system inverts. It literally flips upside down. Now, this idea of inversion is really fascinating. The source material doesn't frame it as some kind of punishment that comes from anger. No, it's described as a literal phase shift in the operating system of reality itself. Life becomes death. That potential that could have blossomed forward now just opens backward into decay. It's a system flip. And this brings us to our third and maybe most crucial case study, Firaun or Pharaoh. What happens when the confession comes, but it's just too late? He yields, he admits the truth, but only after the line has been crossed, as the waters are literally closing in on him. For Firaun, the confession comes after the inversion, and the consequence is that there is no living core left to be saved. The seal opens, sure, but it's empty. All that's left is what the source calls an accursed memory, a preserved body that serves as a sign. A shell without a living spirit inside. And this slide, this is where it all clicks. You have 3 totally different scenarios, 3 different figures, but they are all subject to the exact same unchanging law. The only variable that matters is the timing of their confession. Confess before inversion, and the seed opens into life. Refuse to confess, and the seal opens backward into death. And if you confess after the inversion has already happened, well, there's simply no living core left.
Okay, now let's zoom out. Because this law, it doesn't just apply to individuals or towns. The source describes it as being woven into the very fabric of creation itself.
The source connects this entire four-phase law to a really foundational verse about creation, which says that before the heavens and the earth, the divine throne was upon the water.
Now, in this framework, water is being interpreted symbolically. We're not talking about literal H2O here. It represents a kind of cosmic field of memory, a medium of pure potential where all possibilities, both true and false, are recorded and tangled up together. This water is the cosmic stage where this whole drama of confession and inversion plays out.
So this suggests a really fascinating model of reality. On one hand, our actions and their consequences seem pretty deterministic, almost like they're recorded in this cosmic memory. But on the other hand, the final outcome, whether that spiritual core opens to life or death, can be altered by divine will, and it's often triggered by that crucial act of a timely confession.
So what's the ultimate takeaway? What's the final lock that seals this whole intricate system together?
The source concludes that all these apparent centers of power, all those false authorities, all of our individual egos, they're all temporary. They're all destined to collapse inward until they resolve back to the one true center, the single point of origin, a lie.
So after all that complexity, the entire system boils down to this incredibly stark and powerful summary. One unchanging law, one fundamental split between truth and falsehood, and one ultimate judge of the outcome. And that leaves us with one last, lingering question to think about. If the system is this clear, if the law is fixed, and the protocol for finding truth is laid out so plainly, what's the real obstacle? What is it, deep down, that prevents us from making that simple choice for a timely confession?